Week to week, much of our television coverage deals with the latest advancements in firearms and cartridges and speed in competition. But not this week. This time, we're slowing things down and returning to the past with flint and steel and black powder. It's the National Muzzleloading Rifle Association's national matches that are both competition and living history from the early 1800s. A simpler time when shooting was slower and harder. Tucked into the green hills of southeastern Indiana is the town of Friendship. It may look small, but don't be fooled. This little town is a very big destination for shooting enthusiasts from all over the world. And those shooters that come to Friendship share one thing in common.
Everybody comes here to shoot black powder.
And shoot it they do. Every spring and fall, thousands of members of the National Muzzleloading Rifle Association come to the Walter Klein Range in Friendship to compete and participate in all things black powder.
They all come here, they support this organization, they know the importance of what we do here. And here again, it's Mecca.
Or would you expect to find Mr. Flintlock himself? Our own George Sutton from Impossible Shots. As George can tell you, there's a lot going on at an NMLRA event in Friendship.
They do it all here. Black powder cartridge, flintlock rifles, caplock rifles, inline rifles, pistols. You name it, they have it. You want to throw tomahawks, come to Friendship.
You heard him right, tomahawks. For NMLRA, there's a match for almost anything true to the era of black powder shooting.
Our primitive range, you see white wall tents, teepees, those things. Everybody's walking around in period correct dress. We also have all different forms of primitive type competitions.
But the primitive range is about more than just competition.
The living history side of Friendship has been a big part of who we are. We have a primitive bow making class that can show you how to build a bow and shoot that bow on the primitive range. So you've built this and now you can go compete with it.
For Michelle Lukash, bringing her flintlock to Friendship is a way to connect with the men and women who forged our nation.
It's just fun to experience what it used to be like. I mean, you take it for granted what we have now and how hard it was then, because it is hard. I want to experience that, be part of that.
That experience is a big part of what brings people like Michelle back to Friendship year after year. And then there's that squirrel.
4 years in a row, I've come in second on that squirrel, and I am so pushing to get first this year. By the end of the week, I hope to have that first.
Of course, living history is only part of what Friendship has to offer. Cross the creek and you'll find matches covering nearly a half-mile of firing lines.
That is bench, offhand, pistol, slug, silhouette, all forms of shooting. We have a skeet range, a trap range, and sporting clays.
Here, matches are scored on a variety of targets, including silhouettes, long-range steel, and, of course, paper.
Oh, that was a good shot, too.
On the pistol range, Lou Helsel is taking on paper targets at 25 yards with his smoothbore flintlock.
If they stay in the black, they're a good shot.
Like all the shooters at Friendship, Lou has a lot of matches to choose from.
We shoot caplock pistols, Kentucky-style flintlock pistols, muzzle-loading revolvers that were issued to the American or Confederate troops. If you want to shoot the whole program here, there's something for everybody.
And that's pretty much true of Friendship in general. Something for everybody. How about long-range precision? Well, you'll find that here, too, with competitors ringing 18-inch square steel at 500 yards.
Hey, these guns can shoot.
And even though Friendship's longest ranges measure 500 yards, these shooters with their 1870s technology are capable of target accuracy at twice that range.
Our long-range guys shoot 1,000 yards with a muzzleloader, and I know people that say you can't hit anything at 1,000 yards with a muzzleloader. Well, they'll beg to differ.
Of course, there's one aspect about friendship that no one who comes here will differ on.
You're going to have fun. You have to have fun to come to friendship.
I've seen guys that have been shooting for many, many years. They like their trusty old rifle and they love doing this stuff. They don't care if they hit any target.
It's just a great place to be. This week, I don't believe I would rather be anywhere in the world than right here.
It's fun. I mean, once you get hooked, you're hooked for good.
Call it hooked on the smoke from black powder. And black powder is only one part of what you'll need. For over 80 years, members of the National Muzzleloading Rifle Association have come to Friendship, Indiana, to shoot black powder in friendly competition. That includes our own George Sutton, who knows his way around a flintlock rifle and around Friendship, where you can find everything you need to join him on the range.
I've been doing this for a long time. Been shooting muzzleloaders for a long time. Hence the name Mr. Flintlock. Given to me by Shooting USA's Impossible Shots.
For George, part of the appeal of muzzleloader shooting is in the tools of the trade.
You need a bag and a horn. You need flints for your frizzen, for your lock. So it's fun to accumulate all that stuff and learn how to use it.
Kit stock a little too refined? How about something on the raw side? Wayne Dunlap of Dunlap Woodcrafts can offer you a really fine wood blank in curly hard maple.
This is the one that I've only had 10 like that out of 100,000 blanks. It's curly hard maple. The very fine uniform curl that runs the full length, both sides of the gun. It's perfect quarter sawn and has the sweep down through the wrist so that you have the strongest wrist and the best rifle you can build.
And some time back, George's own rifles started out much the same way.
As a matter of fact, Charles Wallingford, the gentleman that built this rifle for me many years ago, is set up right across from me in his booth. Look, I brought that for you to look at again.
See that thing? I haven't seen it forever. Yeah, it is dirty. You haven't cleaned it, huh? I've had the pleasure of building George's rifle for him. I can't recall the year that he made it, but he wanted me to build him one, and he shot a lot out of it. It's performed very well for him. Got a few battle scars on it and so forth. Very good. Still shooting good, huh?
Still shooting very well.
Good.
It's a fine rifle, and I've had it for many years, and I'm sure a number of you see me shoot with it on Impossible Shot.
Or maybe you're ready for a finished rifle. Maybe even something refined. Very refined. Or maybe just have a look.
So go around the corner. If you don't like this style of rifle, and you can find some of the finest craftsmen in America that build this kind of stuff. You can find people like Mike Miller. Michael, how are you? Good to see you. This is a gun he built for his daughter years ago. You see the spectacular work in it. What is it, half size?
About half size.
About half size of a regular American flintlock rifle.
I wanted my daughter to be able to go out and shoot with me. And so I built a rifle that I thought she could pick up and carry. And when she was 7, that was a pretty good sized rifle. And she shot it till she was about 11. And then she told me it was too small and she wanted a bigger one. She had to wait till she graduated college, and then she got a little bit bigger gun.
It's absolutely spectacular. Liberty long rifles. This is Marvin Kemper. His dad started making rifles right after World War II.
He built his number 3000 gun in 1989. But there's something about being close to that history that I find fulfilling. That was a little squirrel rifle I made about 10 years ago, and it was built from the pattern of my dad's, actually, what I call his Berks County style, and we incorporated some wire and my own carving pattern, and it's a very small caliber, very slim rifle. The other thing is that, you know, you finish one of these rifles, one of the last things you do is you engrave your name in the top of the barrel. And like those guns, these guns should be around 200 years from now. They're going to be around for many generations of owners. And there's just something that's kind of inspiring and gratifying in knowing that, I guess you call it a legacy.
So maybe now, thanks to George and his many friends in the NMLRA, you're ready to go and create your own muzzle-loading legacy in friendship, much like Mr. Flintlock himself.
It's a lot of fun when you get into it. I threw my cartridge guns away when I got into muzzle-loading shooting.
Thanks, George. I'm not sure I'm ready to throw my cartridge guns away, but I do appreciate the art of the gun builders and the challenge of muzzleloading. The Woods Walk is part of the National Muzzleloading Rifle Association's Black Powder Shoot in Friendship, Indiana. It recalls one of the challenges that would have been set up to entertain the mountain men who came to rendezvous twice a year to sell their furs and have some fun. Well, Mr. Flintlock is taking us along to show us how it's done.
Here we are at the primitive woods walk. This wood walk is set up so that you shoot at numerous different targets at different stations, different distances, different sizes. So you don't know when you get at the beginning of the wood walk what you're going to encounter when you walk into the woods. Some of the targets are very, very difficult. Some of them are very, very easy. Every shot that you encounter can be done. It's not an impossible shot. It replicates the hunting situation. You're out in the woods and you see something off in the woods and you shoot at a small mark. That's what this is all about. Here we are at our first station. You can plainly see the buffalo down through the woods there. That would be the first target. That plate is 3/8 inch steel. And that's what happens when you hit it with force. Well, here we are at another fun one. At about 20 yards, there's a horizontal chain. If there was any more shrubbery in back of it, you wouldn't be able to see it. So it's a very difficult shot. That's how you do that. Well, here we are at the playing card and skewer station. Both difficult shots. You're looking at two targets here. You're looking at playing cards on the top, standing on edge. Below the cards are very fine skewers made of wood, and you have to cut those in half as well. You have to cut the card entirely in half. If you only cut it 3/4 in half, it doesn't count. Did it go? So the next step is to see if we cut it in half or partially cut it. So let's go look for it. There it is. There's half of it anyway. Sometimes the other half's difficult to find in the wood. But today we seem to be in luck because the other piece is right under this board. I think it's the other piece. Let's see. And there you are. 58 caliber round ball takes a big chunk out of stuff. You can see there's a significant piece missing out of the middle of that card. I guess I'll take that home and hang it on my refrigerator. So I guess the next thing we'll do is we'll move on and try to cut a skewer in half. Well, it looks like I got lucky. I had a very difficult time seeing it, but there it is. I guess I'll put that on the refrigerator too. Well, that's the woods walk. If you want to try it, practice up, bring your muzzleloader, and come on out and try it. We'd love to see you.
In the history of firearms, none has been more successful and more revered than the 1911 government model. Chambered in 45 ACP, the 1911 served the U.S. in World Wars I and II, the Korean War, and the tunnel rats of Vietnam. It's no surprise that one of the finest auto pistols ever devised was the brainchild of one of the greatest designers, John Moses Browning.
It's a legendary firearm, absolutely superb piece.
And like most of Browning's work, the 1911 was an exercise in effective simplicity.
The 1911 government model is recoil operated. It has an interesting locking system whereby it has a swinging link on it that when the slide withdraws, the barrel drops down, allows it to unlock, picks up another charge, goes forward, the barrel rises again, locks, and fires. It's reliable, rugged, simple. There's not much that can go wrong with it.
But at the heart of the 1911 is the cartridge it chambers, the equally legendary 45 ACP.
The 45 ACP was designed by John Browning. ACP, of course, stands for Automatic Colt Pistol. Most people think it came out at the same time as the Colt 1911, but they are wrong. It was originally designed in 1905 for an earlier Browning auto pistol that was not a total success. It's a great stopper, definitely a formidable round, and very popular.
And in 1905, a formidable round was just what the U.S. military wanted. Its standard sidearm was the less than successful .38 Colt revolver, and it needed replacing.
The U.S. authorities decided it was time for the U.S. to adopt a larger caliber auto pistol.
Under contract with Colt, Browning set out to improve his 1905 design, chambered in his 45 ACP. After exhaustive military trials against competitors like Luger and Savage, the new Colt was the clear victor, firing 6,000 rounds in its final trial without a problem. On March 28, 1911, John Browning's masterpiece was officially designated the automatic pistol caliber 45 model of 1911. By World War I, much of the American military would be equipped with the finest service pistol in the world.
The largest number of 1911s in World War I were still produced by Colt. Remington UMC made a number of them, as did Springfield Armory. And while those guns served very well, the 1911 was still the favorite auto pistols. Matter of fact, Alvin York, basically performed his feat of capturing, a large number of German soldiers. And one of the guns used was a Colt 1911 government model.
By the time the 1911 entered World War II, some small design adjustments had been made to improve its handling.
Made the trigger a little more accessible to people with smaller hands. Did some cutouts behind the trigger. They changed the shape of the hammer. They increased the beaver tail safety. Made it a little more comfortable to shoot, and they had an arched mainspring housing again, which made the gun just a little more ergonomic.
Redesignated the 1911 A1. More than 1.9 million examples would be produced for American troops during World War II.
Made by several different makers, including Colt, Remington Rand, Ithaca, Union Switch and Signal.
And the 1911 A1 would continue to serve very well for GIs in Korea, Vietnam, and beyond. In 1985, the 9mm M9 Beretta was officially adopted by the American Armed Forces, bringing an end to over 7 decades of U.S. military service for the veteran 1911.
However, it's a very, very, very popular system made by a number of different makers today.
In fact, for today's civilians, the enthusiasm for John Browning's masterpiece shows no signs of slowing. Race gun with high-cap polymer grip, compensator, and optic. But the operating design is more than 100 years old at the heart. It's Browning's 1911.
When it comes to the accurate portrayal of firearms in Hollywood, there are a handful of companies that make sure the job is done right. One of the biggest is Independent Studio Services near Thousand Oaks, California. Larry Zanoff is our guide this time through some of their more notable Western genre gun.
Westerns are, the love of our movie world. We like Westerns because they're very iconic. It kind of reaches back to the good old days. It's a very American genre of films. And of course, the good thing for us in the weapons department regarding Westerns is everybody's got a gun. These are what we call manually operated weapons, as opposed to a semi-automatic or fully automatic that would be like an energy-operated weapon. And when you're dealing with manually operated weapons, you don't really need to alter them to shoot blanks.
Less work to make the guns function with blanks doesn't mean there aren't other intricate modifications necessary.
So this is Sylvester Stallone's, or Barney's gun, in the Expendable films. The Western-style gun for a very modern movie, the Expendables movies. But you can see also that it's not quite a Western gun anymore. There's a lot of customization that went into this. You can see the hammer's been designed specifically for the fanning quick draw scenes. The cuts compensators, on the end of the barrel for venting. The barrel's been cut shorter, so for ease of carry. And one of the things you got to remember too, when you see this hammer for fanning, which is a very iconic thing in Western film, it's actually very bad for the mechanism of the single action. And so the timing has to get adjusted. If you know you're going to use the gun specifically for fanning, the internal mechanism has to be strengthened and timed correctly so that you don't get what's called throw-by or skipping. Because the faster you want to fan, you can actually have the cylinder throw-by center and you don't have the round go off. So there's actually hours and hours of customization that you never get to see because it's inside of that mechanism.
Other times, the customization is meant to speed up the work behind the scenes.
We use cartridge conversions quite a bit for wide shots in Westerns because from a prop point of view, it's quicker to reload. So we would only use the black powder cylinder for a close-up shot, or what we call an insert shot. And then most of the rest of the time, it'll be with a cartridge conversion for ease of use on set. Quentin Tarantino's signature Western, if you will, Django Unchained, it was the first one that he did because Hateful Eight soon followed on the trails of that. Jamie Foxx's gun right here and Christoph Waltz's gun. You can see kind of an interesting progression here, as in the story, Christoph Waltz was the experienced bounty hunter who takes Django on as like a protege. So we have the Remington 1858 that Christoph used. His protege, he just takes the 1858 Remington and kind of customizes it. Same gun, just shorter barrel, a little bit more customized on the hammer for rapid fire. And as far as, the film world goes, you'll see something interesting here, which is a cartridge conversion cylinder in this one, as opposed to a black powder cylinder in this one.
The same process was utilized for the 2010 remake of True Grit.
This is a very good example, again, of some of the movie magic that we utilize in Hollywood, as this gun has a cartridge conversion cylinder in it, and this one has the original black powder percussion cap cylinder. These, of course, were hero guns in True Grit. Very, very well-made movie. I hate to say it because I love John Wayne, but I almost like the remake better because there's a little bit less Hollywood in it and a little bit more authenticity in it, and it just comes through as the same story but a very different character to the film.
Sometimes the work is done, but never sees the light of day.
These two particular guns were made for a show called The Sixth Gun. It was based on a graphic novel. Very beautiful, intricate work on the guns, different engravings, little jewels marked on them. Each one of the 6 guns had some kind of magical power. Unfortunately, we filmed the entire pilot through completion, but it never saw the light of day on screen for some reason. Not really sure exactly why it happened. These, of course, being so specific, will never rent again for any other show. They just stay as part of our collection as an example of the type of work that we can do on future projects.
For firearms enthusiasts, a Hollywood-produced film will be under tremendous scrutiny for accuracy. It can make or break a movie's success. Well, that's why more and more big productions rely on independent studio services for help.
Sometimes people see things in movies and they go, those guys in Hollywood, they don't know what they're doing. We do. We strive for, historical accuracy all the time.
There has to be a balance between what is accurate and what is available.
This particular gun was in some of the episodes of Bonanza, most likely in Big Valley and many of those other shows as well. At that time, there were not available the reproduction firearms that we see available now. So if you still strive to be historically accurate with the firearms and you wanted to portray a Henry repeater, what you had to do was take a Winchester Model 92 like this one, remove the forend, put on a fake cocking tab here, and it could pass in a very quick cut as a Henry repeater. Nowadays, of course, you can order them through Navy Arms and many other production companies out of Italy, but back then they didn't really have that ability.
There's also practicality to take into account.
These are Viggos guns from Appaloosa. Keith Walters, again, was the prop master. He called me up and said, hey, we've got this movie. It's not a big budget. They've written in a very unique gun, an 8-gauge gun into it. And as we know, in the prop world, we have a saying, if you have one, you have none. So we know we need multiples now because it's the hero gun. Of course, to buy original 8 gauges would be very, very costly. So what we did was we bought some inexpensive 12-gauge shotguns, and we designed kind of a sleeve. I contracted it out with a good gunsmith buddy of mine, and we created these sleeves that created the outward appearance of a much larger caliber, when in fact we were still able to use the standard 12-gauge blank that we use. So it helped us from a visual point of view because we could call it an 8-gauge, but at the same time we didn't have to develop a custom load because we already had 12-gauge shotgun shells in existence.
Another widely used reproduction in the ISS collection is their Gatling gun, seen in many films, including the 2003 film, The Last Samurai. The Gatling gun was seen again in a completely different setting, The Book of Eli from 2010.
These are some Anderson Guncraft recreations, very, very accurate to the original guns. They're 45-70 caliber, 10 barrels, and this really was the force multiplier of the day, right? So if you remember, there's the old folks' house in the movie. It's a wood structure, and the bad guys come chasing our heroes down, and out of the back of their truck, they have an armored car, and they open up the back, and this Gatling gun pops out, and they basically shred the house.
For this film, the Gatling gun served dual purpose.
Not only was this scene in the film shooting blanks, but we then had to go out to a shooting range during post-production and record the sound of gunfire, of bullets impacting on wood. So we had these long 12-foot planks, and we had several dozen of them, and we spent the day shooting bullets at wood planks to get that sound. That's the level of authenticity that we go to now, and that's because of the level of authenticity that the viewing public requires from big budget productions nowadays.
For the Steve McQueen classic Wanted Dead or Alive, the gunsmiths took advantage of their manufacturer's FFL.
This is what we call the mare's leg, right? Very classic firearm shows like Wanted Dead or Alive with Steve McQueen and whatnot. And it's nicknamed that because it kind of looks like a mare's leg, right? This is a long gun that's been cut down. So it's kind of a unique, obviously it's an NFA-controlled weapon at this point.
The manufacturing capability is what makes ISS the premier armorer to Hollywood.
If you can't get it done here, you can't get it done anywhere. So that's how we earn our bread and butter. We find out ways to modify guns and get onto screen what the director or the production wants. As part of the prop department, our job as prop people is to create the reality that can be filmed to get the director's vision up on screen.